Hey everyone, I am so happy you're here for our first YouTube workshop, which is called Be Brave. This workshop is all about fear and how to overcome your fears. Most of us deal with fear on some level, and a lot of us are really restricted and heavily burdened by it. It is a huge obstacle in our lives, preventing us to take that big leap to accomplish our goals, to overcome our issues with other people and relationships, etc., etc. And so I wanted to just spend some time here talking about fear and how to overcome it. A lot of this is from my personal experience because I have basically spent my entire life feeling like I am heavily burdened by fear, and it has really impacted my physical health, my emotional health, and my well being in general, and caused me a significant amount of stress. So, I'm going to be sharing with you some of the things I did and some of the best ways to overcome the seven most common fears, along with content around how to deal with fear in general, because you may have fears that are not even reflected in this workshop. And I want to make sure that you feel empowered to know how to deal with that. There is a workbook that goes along with this workshop. It's absolutely free, and you can get it using the link below. This workshop will be 3 sessions. You are currently watching session 1. In session 1, we're going to be talking about real fear, OPO, other people's opinions, and fear of failure and fear of success, because really those are flip sides of the same coin. So let's get started, y'all. The first thing we're going to talk about on our list is real fear. Real fear is fear of things that can really happen, that have really happened, that do really happen. These are the things that are going on in your life that you're actually very concerned about. And maybe you see the writing on the wall, right? These are not hypervigilant fears. These are not, I have a 2-year-old, what happens when they're 16 if they get their license and they have a car accident? That is way in the future fear. This is stuff that is really going on in your life. For a lot of us, this is health fear. This is financial fear. And sure, it is fear about what's happening in our families or even what's happening in our relationships. I talk to a lot of people who are very afraid of things like their marriage is struggling and they're afraid they're going to get divorced. They are seeing the writing on the wall and they're afraid that they're going to lose their job. Or you have people like me. I recently found out that 2 close family members had breast cancer, and I had to go through an extensive screening process and even have a biopsy. And boy, I have to tell you, that was definitely scary. Y'all, the biopsy came back benign. Good news. Yay! But it was definitely scary. And it is scary going forward in my life, knowing that this is a very real and present risk for me. So, what do you do about real fear? Real fear is a little bit more tangible to grab a hold of. So, the first thing you really want to do with real fear is evaluate the fear and make sure that it is real. Because a lot of times we have a story in our head and it feels very, very real, but that's not necessarily the truth. It can very much help to write down the thing that you think is a real fear, write all about it, and go back through and circle the things that you know to be absolute fact, that you know are absolutely true in the situation, and see how many of them there are. Those are likely your real fears. Now, you may be writing about some scenario that takes place 10 years from now or 15 years from now, and it may be really possible. But if it's not something that is in your present, we really need to take that and set it aside. Now, I'm going to be very honest here and say that this might require the help of a professional. Some of us have severe anxiety around certain issues that are very far into the future, and we struggle to let it go as a real prevalent fear in our lives right now. And so that might require some additional help if you're really feeling stuck in some future fear. However, with the fear you have now that you've identified as a present fear, the next thing I want you to ask yourself is this mine? Is this mine to manage, to control, to handle? Is this actually mine? And the reason I want you to ask yourself that is because a lot of times we're held up in fear of things that are way beyond our control. For example, I have 5 adult children. They are 20 to 30 years old. I can't control what's going on in their lives. Am I afraid about certain decisions they may be making? Am I afraid of what their future may hold? Am I afraid about potentially the new person they're dating hurting them? Sure. Yes. Is that a real fear? Yes. Is that a real possibility? Absolutely. But there really isn't anything I can actively do about it. The only thing I can do is choose to show up for them, right? And choose, if I am asked or if we have the space in our relationship, to choose to mention to them that maybe I'm seeing a red flag with their new beau. Okay. And by the way, that's not always possible. Sometimes there isn't space in the relationship. And I think sometimes it's important to recognize that stating your fears to someone else about their choices can actually worsen the situation. So, really thinking about, is this right or going to work? What am I going to get out of this if I tell them? Is it probable that this will have the outcome I want if I tell them? I tend to think about that in all of my relationships as I engage in having those tough conversations, right? If I tell my kid that I think that there are several red flags about their partner, is that going to put them in a more or less safe situation? Is that going to help them make a different decision? Or are they in a space where they're not going to be able to receive that? And that's going to help their partner isolate them more from me, right? So, really being able to think through that process. By the way, that recently happened in my life. And there really wasn't a way to come straight out with it. So instead, I just showed up more. I gave some hints. I encouraged some reflection, right? I would say things like, well, does that seem right to you? Or is that something that you think is okay in your relationship? Things like that, to really help my child come to this place on their own. And then they did, by the way, leave the relationship. At any rate, so you want to, again, I'm going to recap, write it down, find the facts, decide if it is yours. Then, if it is yours, and if you have found the facts, it will be much, much easier for you to make a plan. All right. One of the things that we instinctively want to do sometimes with real fear is bury our head in the sand and pretend it's not happening. If your fear is real, doing that will not help. Okay. The thing that you are afraid of can actually come to pass. So, burying your head in the sand is not the way to do it. The way to do it is to think about what you can do. Okay. What are the things that you can do to mitigate the thing that you're afraid of? Now, at the top of this lesson, I gave the example of my finding out that I have a high breast cancer risk. What I can do about my very real fear of breast cancer is get my screenings. What I can do is discuss this with my doctor. What I can do is find out what my risk factor is. What I can do is show up for my appointments. That's what I can do. And so I have done that. And what that creates is a sense of empowerment. I am taking back the situation. I am reclaiming this for myself. I am saying, I am going to do everything possible to address this thing that I am afraid of and try to mitigate it. Why? Well, y'all, if you are like me and you are concerned about something like breast cancer, okay, the likelihood is you're not actually concerned about having breast cancer. You're concerned about dying from it. Like, let's be honest, okay? My big fear is not that they're going to say, hey, you have breast cancer. It's totally treatable. it's no big deal. Okay. And by the way, I know that it's always a big deal, but saying this is early stage and we can just remove the mass is a lot different than saying you're going to die. Okay. So when I think about the scenario, I think the best thing I can do is to get my screenings. And if I do develop breast cancer, because y'all, I cannot stop my body from developing breast cancer, but what I can do is find out early enough that I have more treatment options and I'm more likely to survive. That's what I can do. Right. And so recognizing this real fear, finding the facts inside of it, okay, and addressing those facts, making a plan to mitigate the fear, right? And as you saw, I dug a little deeper and I was like, well, what is it about having breast cancer that scares me so much? What is it? It's the fact that I could die, right? And so finding the space where I can mitigate the big capital F fear there and minimize the likelihood that that's going to happen is incredibly impactful. If you, for example, are struggling with real fear about your finances or losing your job, okay, now is the time to start saving money. Now is the time to start looking for another job. Now is the time to scale back on spending. Now is the time to consider downsizing your house. Now is the time to make changes or moves. Because the truth of the matter is, you're likely not as afraid of losing your job as you are afraid that if you lose your job, you may lose your home, right? Your big capital F fear is actually financial catastrophe. Okay. And so there are things that we can do to mitigate the capital F fear. And that is where we really need to focus our attention when it comes to real fear. So we're going to write it down, decide if it's yours, and make a plan to mitigate it. That is what we do with real fear. Okay, we're going to move on to the second fear that we're talking about today, and that is OPO, or fear of other people's opinions. Okay, so many of us are held back by fear of other people's opinions. We're thinking about starting that business. We're thinking about doing whatever the thing is, right? And immediately it comes to mind, what are people going to think? What are people going to say when I do this thing? Do I need to keep it secret? And now this happens on a couple different fronts, right? Because I remember experiencing this for most of my life about even things like my goals. I would be like, I am not telling anyone that I am quitting smoking again. Okay. I keep telling people that and I keep not quitting and I keep restarting. And then I feel like everyone in my life is judging me, right? Everyone in my life is thinking, oh, yeah, right. You've said that before. Oh, she never sticks to it. Oh, she's such a quitter. She just always fails at stuff. And so I would have that playing in my head, and it would prevent me from getting support or getting accountability because I was so afraid of the judgment. And then on the flip side, for example, this is my third successful business. Okay. And every time I started a business, I would have that. Maybe I shouldn't tell anyone about this. What if it doesn't work? They're going to think I'm crazy. We have 5 kids. They're going to think I'm being financially reckless. They're going to tell me that I shouldn't be doing that. And especially with this business, right? With this business, this was much more profound. I'm going to put myself out there publicly in a very big way. I am going to go online and share my experiences and share my knowledge with complete strangers. And they're all going to think that I am crazy. And people are going to leave mean comments. And by the way, they do. Okay. People are going to leave mean comments. People are going to criticize everything about me in my life. They do. People who know me are going to be embarrassed. People who know me are going to think this is stupid, right? People, and by the way, I even had this one. People who know me are going to be too inconvenienced. They're going to think that this is a problem for them. These are fear of OPO, right? These are the fears of OPO. And we have fears of OPO about so many things in our lives. I cannot tell you how many times as a young mom, I had fear about people judging my parenting, right? Even strangers in public. That lady in the grocery store who would say something to me in the line, and I would feel so triggered because I would feel so judged. Okay. Fearing other people's opinions, other people's reactions, other people's responses to what you're doing is very, very prevalent. I have, however, noticed that it is more profound and more severe if you grew up in a family or surrounded by people, or you are currently in a family or surrounded by people who gossip a lot, who are highly judgmental. Okay. The people around you are actually teaching you and have taught you that people judge you, that people have harsh opinions, that people have harsh feedback, that people are unkind and very focused on what you are doing. In reality, that's not entirely true. Now, I hate when people say no one is thinking about you. I know that that is not true. I come from a family environment and a community. I live in kind of a smaller town type vibe community where people actually are judging you. They are talking about you. You know how I know they are? Because every time I'm with them, they're talking about somebody else or trying to. I've created some pretty firm boundaries around that, which is where I'm going with this. So you do know that people actually are doing that. You yourself are watching Instagram videos or YouTube videos, or maybe this video right now, and you are judging me about the shirt that I'm wearing that is probably like, I don't know, 10 years old in style, right? You may be judging me about my environment or about what I'm saying to you right now or about my family structure because you've heard about that in other content. You might be doing it. So you know that this is a real thing. It drives me bonkers when thought leaders try to tell you no one's thinking about you. I know they are. Okay. The thing is, I have to ask, why are you more concerned about their opinion than your own? Why are you more concerned about their opinion than your own enrichment, than your own growth, than your own goals, than your own purpose, than your own dreams? I could do this all day, by the way. Why does their opinion matter more to you? And a lot of times when we really pull that apart, the reason it matters more to you is because of the way you were conditioned as a child. Okay. And it's because you view yourself through their lens, right? And so, what we really need to do to move past this is to come to a place where we more highly value our own opinion. We need to come to a place where we recognize that our needs matter, that we are worthy, and that at the end of the day, we are the author and the judge of our own lives, not everyone else. We need to understand that the people around us, the strangers, our family members, our spouse, our kids, the people around us do not actually know us better than we know ourselves. That it is not their place to make those judgments or those determinations. That they may give us feedback and it may even be well intentioned, but it also may not be welcome. And it's okay to create boundaries there. It's okay to say, yeah, I actually am not looking for your advice. I'm not looking for your approval. Because the truth of the matter is that no matter how much the people around us love us or understand us, they're not in our shoes. They don't actually know what is within us that is creating this situation. And at the end of the day, they're not the ones that are going to be holding the bag. They won't be the ones responsible for it. If I did not start this business because of the people who had opinions about it, or the people I thought might have opinions about it, the only person who would be regretting that is me, not them. They would not be holding the regret. I would. And so I have to ask you, how many times in your life have you been held back or not done something that you really wanted to do or not shown up in a certain way that you really wanted to show up? And you ended up holding the responsibility. You ended up feeling regretful. You ended up feeling ashamed. You ended up feeling embarrassed. You ended up, right, missing out. And when we think about that, it becomes a lot easier to step back and say, I understand that other people might have opinions, but since they're not going to have the responsibility, they're not going to have the consequence of this situation. I am. Their opinions really don't matter. Where they will have consequence, consult them. I have 5 children. I talked to all 5 of my children about my business when I started it. I talked to all 5 of them about their preferences in being present or being talked about in my business. Okay. And 4 of them said, talk about anything you want. If it helps other people, I'm happy for it and I don't care. I don't need you to guard my privacy. And one of them said, I don't even want you to name or gender me in your content. Absolutely fine. My one child doesn't want the consequence of potentially being recognized by my audience publicly. That child is fine with me talking about them. They have autism and they do not want the potential uninvited social interactions that can be caused by doing what I do, right? And that makes sense. That's reasonable. My husband has boundaries about how involved he is in my content. He's allowed to have opinions about his stuff, the things that he will deal with the consequences of. Okay. He does not, however, get to tell me that I'm not allowed to share with you that I had this experience. Okay. Or that this is important to me. Or, for example, he asked me, are you sure you want to share about the breast cancer scare? Are you sure you want to tell people publicly about that? Right. And he'll check in with me, but he did not judge that. And he didn't have opinions about whether I should or shouldn't. And you know why? Because the only one who will deal with the consequences of that, me. I will be the one dealing with those consequences. Will he residually? Sure. But I will be the one dealing with that for the most part. Okay. And here's the thing, you really have to think about whether or not other people's opinions get to be considered, right? Whether they get to be considered. For example, I share a lot about my childhood, and I understand that that might not be comfortable for people in my family. I share things about my in laws that might not be comfortable for them, right? I love my family, I love my in laws, but I'm sharing with you my truth. And that doesn't mean that that's their truth. That means it's my truth, right? And I have to be authentic to my truth. And that's just the reality. So really think about who's going to deal with the consequences of this. The person who deals with the consequences gets to be the person, the primary consequences gets to be the person whose opinion counts most. The next thing I'm going to tell you to do about fear of other people's opinions is really reflect on yourself and your circle of influence, what you are consuming, okay? Because being consumed with or being in conversations with people who tend to be highly judgmental makes this fear of other people's opinions worse. You being highly judgmental yourself makes this worse. It's really important that we catch ourselves, okay? And I mean catch yourself. If you are currently a keyboard warrior, it's time to stop. If you are a person, I love to people watch, y'all. Okay. I love to people watch. If you are a person who people watches and you judge other people, if you gossip about your sister or your neighbor or anyone else in your life where you're speaking negatively about them, okay, it's time to stop doing that. You doing that is part of why you believe that everyone else is doing that. You engaging in that also opens you up for that to be done to you. Meaning, whoever you're gossiping to about your sister or your neighbor or whomever, they are also gossiping about you. Okay. You are not off like, oh, that person I would never speak negatively of, but I will engage in it with them. It's really important that we stop engaging in criticism and in judgment, because when we engage in it, or when we are party to it, or when we are adjacent to it, or when we are consuming content where other people are doing this, okay, what is happening is we are creating a mindset of fear of OPO. We are creating proof that this negativity is there. It gives us ammunition, okay, or fortification to be able to project this on everyone else and see them as doing this to us. We have to stop doing it. Then the third thing I'm going to tell you to do about fear of OPO is, remember how I said the person whose opinion matters most is yours? Sometimes we are the meanest ones, okay? Our perception of other people's opinions of us are horrific because we're projecting our own judgment of ourselves onto them. I think I'm a failure, so everyone else thinks I'm a failure. I gave the example earlier about how when I would quit smoking, for example, I wouldn't tell other people because I would imagine that they would think, oh, she's such a screw up. She's so lazy. She has no self discipline. She's never going to be able to do this. Yeah, right. Like I would imagine them thinking all these things, right? She's a quitty failure. I say that all the time because that's what I thought of myself. I projected that they were thinking the things I was actually thinking. Okay. So if your internal dialogue is negative and hostile, you are much more likely to think everyone else's opinion of you is as well. You're much likely to be afraid that people are going to respond to you in that way, think that way about you, have those opinions about you. And the best way to combat that is to start an affirmation practice. The best way to combat that is to actually start rewiring your brain, because that's what affirmations do. They literally rewire your brain. Rewire your brain to change the way you think about yourself. Okay. Because I'm going to tell you, I know for me personally, no one's opinions of me were lower than my own. No one, not even my worst enemies, thought the nasty things about themselves that I did. And that's just a reality. So if you have fear of OPO, I'm going to summarize. You want to think about who's going to have the greatest consequence in the situation and consider their opinions more highly. And that's generally going to be you. The next thing you want to do is limit your exposure to harsh negativity or negativity at all in the form of backbiting or talking about other people, things like that. So you want to limit exposure to gossip, to people who do gossip, to content that contains hostile judgments of other people or judgment or judgmental content, right? And then the third thing that you want to do is really take a look at your self critic and create an affirmation practice if you need to. Check in with yourself and find out if you are the one who has the most nasty opinions of yourself. When you feel more secure in yourself, when you feel more certain of yourself and more confident with yourself, you actually care less and less what other people think. It's just a reality. If this video is getting too long for you, this is the great breaking point, and you can come back to the next session or the next section when you have a little bit more time. Okay, I know this one's a little longer than most of my content, so I thank you for bearing with this. And again, if you needed a break, I hope you got that break in. We're going to move into fear of failure and fear of success. And really, these two are flip sides of the same coin. A lot of times we think we have fear of failure when in fact we have fear of success. And both fear of failure and fear of success are actually heavily rooted in fear of the unknown. And as we move into session 2, you will actually start to see how a lot of these fears tend to intertwine and how they kind of gain strength from each other, right? There are all these thoughts swimming around. Well, what if this? Well, what if that? And in reality, we really can't mitigate all the what ifs. So, next session, I'm going to talk specifically about fear of the unknown. But right now, we're going to really hone into the fear of failure and the fear of success. So, once I had a record of my successes, it was a lot easier for me to cushion failure. And when I realized how much I could learn from failure, the growth I could get out of failure, the self reflection I could get from failure, then I started thinking, what if I set a goal to fail? What if I reframe failure and I make it a goal to fail? What if I push myself to stretch to a place where maybe I'll fail and I take that chance? And now I have a failure goal. By the way, just so we're clear, I have thus far failed at hitting my failure goal. I know I've been doing this for over a year. To this point, I have failed every single month at hitting my failure goal. I have a failure goal of 3 times a month. 3 times a month, I want to fail. I want to fail at something new 3 times a month. And sometimes it's the little things. Like right now, I'm trying to fail at using TikTok to edit videos. Now, why do I say that? Because I'm really afraid of tech. I really struggle with tech. It's a big stretch for me. 3 years ago, I could barely open my email. Okay. So I struggle a lot with tech, and I'm always freaked out that I'm not going to be able to figure it out, that I'm going to fail at figuring it out, and that then I'm going to feel like I'm in over my head and I shouldn't be doing this. And I'm going to be filled with self doubt. So to mitigate that fear that I won't be able to do it, the fear of failure to learn new tech things, I often set a failure goal related to tech. So, if I can't figure out how to edit in TikTok, then I have accomplished my failure goal. Yay! I succeeded at failing. If I can figure it out, well, then I succeeded at figuring it out. Either way, it's a success. Either way, it counts as a success. You are currently watching a failure goal, right? I have a YouTube failure goal, meaning that what I have defined as failure on YouTube is X, right? And if I do fail, I have accomplished my failure goal. If not, I have succeeded at YouTube. Now, sometimes we have to reframe, what does that failure look like? So I set, and by the way, this is kind of like setting a goal, but in reverse. Okay. So I set a goal. If I have not gotten 50 followers or 50 subscribers, I always forget what it's called here. If I have not gotten 50 subscribers by March of 2023, I have accomplished my YouTube failure goal. If I have gotten those 50 subscribers, that's what you're called. If I have gotten the 50 subscribers, then I have succeeded. I know that that seems a long ways out, but I know that YouTube is a longer term platform, right? I know, and by the way, I kind of randomly picked that number. I know that YouTube takes longer to grow. I get it. So I'm setting myself up for success by being realistic here, right? And maybe even under lowballing this. But I am also setting myself up with a failure goal so that if it doesn't happen, right? If on if on March 10th, 2023, I don't have 50 subscribers, I can also celebrate that I have accomplished my failure goal. You're going to be like, I'm at 40. Yay! This sounds crazy. I understand that this sounds crazy, but this reframes your mindset about failure. Because I will tell you, if on March 10th of 2023, I'm at 40 YouTube subscribers, I will guarantee you that I have learned a lot. that I have grown a lot, and that even though I did not hit that goal, even though I failed at hitting my YouTube goal, I failed at YouTube, that I have also benefited a lot of other people, right? I have helped you, hopefully, and encouraged you to create a failure goal and overcome your fear of failure. So it's a win-win, right? It's better than never having done YouTube at all because I was so afraid I would fail and no one would like my content. See how that works? Create a failure goal. I promise you, it makes all the difference in the world. The flip side of failure is success. And a lot of people think that they're afraid of failure, and really they're afraid of success. They're afraid of what will happen. Okay. So earlier, I talked about, when I was talking about OPO, I talked about my kids. I talked about how I have 5 children, and I talked to all of them about what I do. And one of my children said, I do not want you to mention my name or my gender or anything like that. I never want to be recognized publicly. Why did that child say that? Well, because they said, I'm afraid that you will be very successful, and I then will be approached by people in public. People will know who I am. I will become recognizable in a way I don't want to be. This is a very real thing. This is a thing that I talked to my husband about when we started this business. Okay. A lot of people don't identify the fears that they have on the outside of success, what they are actually afraid of, right? If I became really successful, I might have to manage a team. I don't feel like I'm equipped to do that. If I successfully lost 100 pounds, I would have to maintain that. For some people, if I successfully lost 100 pounds, I would be triggered because I have been sexually assaulted and I'm afraid I would get too much attention from men. This is, by the way, this is a very real thing that sometimes people really struggle to get their arms around, but it is real. If I was successful, and this, by the way, is even a thing here. If I was successful at identifying whether I have breast cancer or not, and I find out I do, if I'm successful at these follow-up appointments, I might not get the news I want. And then I'll have to deal with that. Okay. So we have these things. If I'm successful in my marriage, I may create a relationship that lasts 60 years plus, and then my husband might die. That's real. Okay. If I'm successful, I will have to be vulnerable. If I'm successful, I will have new challenges. If I'm successful, all right. And here's the thing, this was real for me. I very much want to make an impact. I very much want to help people. Okay. I very deeply and truly want that legacy. I want to help people heal. I do not want to be recognizable. I don't want to be famous. I don't want people to know who I am in a public sort of way. That actually makes me uncomfortable. It's not because I don't love all of y'all. And if you see me somewhere, please do say hi to me. But the idea, okay, of this actually scares me a little bit because I'm a little socially awkward, right? It scares me a little bit to be recognizable in some way. Like I see other content creators who had a video go viral and like overnight they go to the grocery store and people know who they are. And that makes me a little nervous because that's not my reality right now. And I don't know what that would be like, right? Kind of freaks me out though. All right. And I know that there are people out there who want very badly for that to happen for them. Maybe it's because I'm a Gen Xer. Maybe it's because I grew up in a generation where even celebrities didn't want to be recognizable, right? Like really, truly, celebrities and big musicians were like, I want to go places and not have anybody recognize me. I understand that this is maybe a generational thing, but what I have to think about and what I need you to think about, and the thing I want to challenge you to remind yourself of, to create a mantra, to write on post it notes and put all over your house and your office, are these words: when I get there, I will be equipped. When I get there, I will be equipped. Okay. Why do I say that? Because when we fear success, we fear something that is way ahead of where we are now. And we are imposing our current knowledge, our current understanding, our current level of equipped on something that has not happened yet. And when we get there, we will have all of the experience of having gotten there. And then we will know how to cope with it. We will actually know what to do then. All right, so today, again, to recap, we covered real fear: fear of other people's opinions, fear of failure, and fear of success. And I've given you several different steps and ways to address these fears. In session 2, I am going to be talking about fear of rejection and abandonment, fear of the unknown, and fear of making decisions. Now, make sure that you come back for session 2 and catch that. It will be a little shorter, I promise you. Get your workbook. It's a great place to keep notes. It gives you some of this information to be able to look back on. And do not forget to like and subscribe to this channel so that you can keep up with all of the content. I put out about 4 or more videos a week, just trying to help you with better life and mindset management tips so you can accomplish your goals and de-stress your life. By the way, if you don't subscribe, totally fine. You are just helping me reach my failure goal. At any rate, I just thought that would be funny. At any rate, I want you to remember that you are absolutely amazing and you deserve to live the life you've been dreaming about. I will see you next time. Bye, everyone.